because she's taken a lead role in this. And Amelia's played at European Youths, and she's a Scottish international as well. So, and she plays in Edinburgh. So that's Amelia.
Take that back screen off.
And Joan is from the Shetlands. So in my screen, I've got Joan in the Shetlands. As far north as we can go. And we've got Gillian and Babs down in London. But Gillian's been up to Scotland helping me to coach. And obviously, Jill with a J, you played with Gillian's mum many years ago.
I certainly did. And I was just saying how Jill looks like her mum, and I've got her name is right by her face, so I can't see you. Mum, how are you? Long time no see.
Drop the camera a bit, Jill. That's it.
Oh, that's it. Perfect.
Yeah, perfect.
And this is my youngest daughter. Hello.
Matt, did you say that Paola might not be here?
Yeah,
we're waiting for Callum Morrison, aren't we now?
Paola's ill, so she can't make it.
Okay. Well, we've got Faye instead. Hi, Faye.
Hiya.
Oh, Faye. Hi.
Oh, where's Faye? She's coming on.
I'm just here.
Hi, Faye.
Yeah, I think
Hi.
everyone get
Hi, Faye.
a bit too busy on the screen, to be honest.
Hello.
Can't see Faye.
Can Faye see us? Can you see everybody, Faye?
I can slide to see most people, yeah.
I'm somebody missing.
Just slide your screen across.
Do you want to say, Cheryl's just going to say hello to everybody and then she's going to clear off.
Oh,
Yeah, I can see Faye now. Yeah. On Craig.
Oh, we can't see ourselves now.
No.
That's probably a good thing.
What do you think to Cheryl's table tennis skills on the Table Tennis Scotland videos, eh?
Yay.
Good. Where are we?
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, I'll leave you all to it. I'm off to walk the dogs.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Bye.
Bye.
So,
Right.
Oh, here. We can't see us now, Dave.
but that doesn't matter.
Yeah, I can't. Did you say Faye's here?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can see Faye.
If you
I
scroll
can't see
across, if you scroll across.
Oh, I see. Oops.
Craig's here.
Oh, that's
Good.
great.
Oh, I can see Faye now. That's brilliant. Tess, good. I can't see me, but that's not a bad thing. Right. Oh, yeah. Good. We've got Craig. Brilliant. That's everybody here, isn't it?
I think that's it.
I've lost
I
Matt.
think that's
Yeah, is it how many maximum?
any more.
Yeah, can you get more? Is 9 the maximum you can get on the screen?
I think so.
Yeah, I can get up to 100 people in a meeting on this, but you wouldn't want them all on the screen at the same time.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, you have
Can
to.
we all
you
get
have
on
to-
the same? Can we all get on the one
No.
screen?
Yeah.
Only if you've got a bigger
Because
screen. or
otherwise,
if you
if
want
we
to slide
scroll across.
Oh, actually, if I went that way to get more on 2, 4, 6, 8. No, if I went
No.
vertical. Dylan's
No.
near. So you say by scrolling across, you get different people.
Yeah, but you lose yourself.
But I don't mind losing myself if I could get. That's better. At least I've got 9. Tessa. Tessa's here. Brilliant.
David, have you got the licensed version, or have you got the?
No, Matt's. No, I haven't. No, Matt's the one who's put it all together.
Well,
So
that's the
he's got the
reason.
license one.
Yeah, well, I have got the license one because I'm looking on my iPad. It restricts me to look, but if you've got the free one, it will restrict you for certain things. And when we have more people than this on our screen and our church Zoom meetings we do on Tuesday nights, but
Yeah, I've got 9, including myself.
have you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what we've got, Dave.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got as well.
So I tell you who I haven't got. I've not got Dylan and I've not got Tessa.
I saw Tessa briefly appear. There she is.
Yeah.
Good.
And Dylan's down at the bottom.
Dylan.
You got
Yeah.
Faye, Tessa,
Dylan.
and Dylan
Craig.
and Craig.
If I scroll across, should I get to see Dylan? Tessa, let's see your face. That's it. Good.
Craig's
Oh,
got his,
you've got
Craig's
face,
got his
haven't you,
microphone off. Craig Morrison's got his.
Dylan, how are you doing?
Oh, there's Dylan. Cool.
I'm back on.
Callum and Craig.
There he is.
That's it.
Well, it's getting busy. Everyone seems to be. There's a lot of people watching now, so no
Right,
pressure.
shall we get on with the show?
No pressure on you. 2 million are watching now. Dan.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back. Right, that's right. Okay. Make sure I don't miss anybody on the screen. You know, I mean, I'm looking for you all to put me right. Right, Matt, shall we get, is YouTube started now?
I would just crack on. Yeah.
Okay, first of all, thank you all for coming tonight. A very warm welcome from Table Tennis Scotland. It's going to be an informal evening. Jill's the star of the show. Don Don and I go back 40 years. He's national coaches together, and he's also been the ladies' captain. He's worked for the Commonwealth, so we're in good hands. All of you here will have the opportunity to ask at least one of those questions which you put forward to Don and Jill. And Don was saying just before he came on air, you know, how impressed he was with the quality of the questions. So we'll try and get through as many as we can. Just before we really get started, Don and Jill, happy memories, Scotland?
Very happy memories of Scotland. I think I played in a tournament up there in 1973. It was an invitation event, and they invited several players, and I played against Christine Hellman. There was only the one game, and I remember going to the Edinburgh Tattoo in the evening.
Oh,
so
brilliant.
Happy memories there. We had our honeymoon in the Trossachs.
That's the first thing that I would have mentioned, by the way.
Yeah.
Being the romantic that I am.
Yeah.
Can I just say as well, I was there, well, Jill was with me for the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow 2014. And what an amazing job Scotland did with those games. And obviously the Glasgow organising committee, 18 different sports. Table tennis, I thought, was fantastically well staged. And like a lot of the games you go to, the volunteers that Scotland pulled together, I think they were called the Clydesiders was the name, just did a fantastic job. So that was a wonderful memory and always will be a wonderful memory for me. And also I had a great time in 1979 when the Commonwealth Games were in Edinburgh. And it was Commonwealth Championship, sorry. So just to be clear, that the Commonwealth Games is that event that's every 4 years when it's a multi-sport event. And then table tennis has its own Commonwealth Championships. So that's when it's just for table tennis. And it's a wonderful event. And in 1979, it was held in Edinburgh. I was the coach to the men's team actually there in 1979, and that was a great event. And I played in the singles. I managed to get to the semi-final, which for me was a great result. So yeah, very fond memories of Scotland. And it is very, for us, it's £100 to get to London. It's £30 to come north to Glasgow or Edinburgh. So we like coming up. We've got some great restaurants as well. I know that's nothing to do with table tennis, but we love it, yeah.
Brilliant. Well, one of the reasons Don's looking so happy is because during this lockdown, Preston North End haven't lost a single game. So, well done. Right, Jill, European champion, yet you weren't even the best player in your own house. So tell us about it.
No, that's right. I've got a brother who's 6 years older than me, Paul. I went along to a club with him. He was already going, and then he took me one Saturday afternoon when I was about 9, and just started playing table tennis. And you know, he played practice with me a little bit, but with other players in the club as well. And, you know, he was a very talented player, but he messed around a little bit. Very talented, could play with his right hand and his left hand. He could chop a few, he could attack a few, but he's one of these who talented to play lots of different sports, but didn't concentrate on one, which I did.
Brilliant.
Awesome.
Okay, that sets the scene. What I think we'll do is we'll Joan, are you happy to kick off with the first question?
Yes, please.
Joan,
Hello, Jill.
hi.
Hello, hi Joan.
Even though Joan, Don and Jill know who you are because I've sent them, if you like, a little biography of you. But Joan is from the Shetlands. She played in the 1997 Commonwealth Table Tennis Championships in the individual event. And she has the unique record in the Shetland of being the champion in all 4 racket sports. Am I right? Badminton, squash, table tennis and tennis? Have I got that right?
Yeah,
Excellent.
well, it's
Multi-talented.
yeah. Thank you.
Excellent.
Joan, if you want to ask Jill a question.
Yeah. Hi, Jill.
Hi.
Can I ask you, what was your longest match ever, knowing that you're a defender? And was the game against another defender?
Right. Well, my longest match was in the final of the Europeans in 1976. And that was against Maria Alexandru of Romania. That went to expedite, and that went to expedite in the first game, and that was at 7-6. And at that time, the games were up to 21 points.
Yeah.
I won 3-1, but there was a dispute in the first game. It was 21 all, and she stopped play for about 8 to 10 minutes because she served and she claimed that she won the point before the 13th stroke and she wouldn't play on. And I think, because obviously at that time there wasn't sort of video cameras to relay it back, and TV were filming it, and they were able to go back and show that in fact she didn't win the point. So the game did continue, and I think it went on for about 75 minutes.
Oh wow.
So that would be the longest game I think I've played.
Just to add to Jill's story there, in 1980 I coached the England women's team in the European Championships in Bern, and the England women's team got to the 3rd, 4th playoff match, and they were playing against Romania. And immediately following that match, it was the final of the men's team event, and that was Sweden versus Germany. And there was about, I would say, maybe close to 10,000 spectators came in to watch the match. But Jill was playing Alexandru, a repeat of the final Jill's just told you about. Best of 3 in the team event, but it went on again for well over an hour. And the crowd were waiting for this match between Germany and Sweden, and there was slow hand clapping. But what was fascinating for me as the coach to Jill at the time is it didn't affect her at all. And I think it's one of the hallmarks of a top player. And neither did it affect Alexandru. They couldn't care a monkeys that they were the crowd of 10,000 people in this ice skating stadium were having to wait for their final. And this was the 3rd. And the crowd obviously thought 3rd, 4th playoff, both teams get a medal. Come on. But Jill and Alexandru, it went on for over an hour. So and Jill won, but unfortunately we lost the match then at 2-all. And we finished 4th. But it was interesting to see the crowd's reaction, and then Jill and Alexandru's reaction to the crowd.
Yeah, super. Thank you.
Dylan, you're up next. Let me tell you about Dylan. Dylan De Silva is one of our lead coaches in Dumfries. He helps at the training camps. He knows his table tennis inside out. He has won the championships of Dumfries. and he helps on all the national camps and is also one of the non-playing captains. So Dylan, can we have one of your questions, please? And Gillian, you're next. So have we still got
We
Dylan?
can't hear Dylan.
Has he got the audio off?
No, it's saying it's on, but
Yeah. Can you hear us, Dylan?
Okay, look.
He's not pressed the button to do the internet thing. The internet sound.
So what we'll do is, while we're sorting out that, Gillian and Babs, can you take the next question? And if Dylan can let me know once he comes back on stream. Gillian or Babs?
Jill and Don. Just a photograph which Jill may remember from a long time ago. You see that?
oh yes, yeah.
1967, when you played in the interleague with Mum for Acton District League. So you were about 16, I think.
Yeah, 67. I would have been 16 then. Yes, yeah, I remember that well.
And I'm guessing you were. That must have been close to one junior at the time, and yet you were still playing in the local league and coming quite a long way to play in the Acton District League. You lived in Surrey. Did you from Surrey or somewhere further out?
Yeah, I was Buckinghamshire, Berkshire, that area.
Yeah. So just what I was going to ask you is, I wonder how many top junior players today actually still continue to play in the local leagues, and what do you notice is the difference today for the juniors and top players and how they train and compete compared to how you did a few years ago?
Yeah, well, I would say obviously I played in the Slough League and got match practice there, but the Acton League was strong. So the coach who I was working with said it'd be a good idea to get different match practice, and that's why I came and played in the Acton League, which I thoroughly enjoyed, and obviously had great times with your mum and your dad Eric. But I think probably now there's more coaching sessions available, and the players need to find a right balance between practice and competition. I mean, when I was number one senior, I played in 4 of the 5 3-star tournaments and played the nationals domestically. But I think that the players now only tend to play the nationals because they're playing abroad. And they're going abroad quite early now. So when they finish school, they're going over there to get some good match practice. And I don't think we find as many playing in the local leagues as there used to be. But I think also it's quite hard for youngsters because they've got their education as well. And if, in some leagues they're playing 3-man teams and they might start at 7:30 and they don't finish till late. And I think there's got to be a balance really, and perhaps there should be 2-man teams so the evening isn't quite so long, so they can get back and maybe do their homework or do it during the table tennis like I used to do. But it is very different now. I don't think they play in as many leagues because Don's just started playing in the Preston League after a 40-year gap, but the age, how would you say the age of playing in the local league now?
Well, there's still a few older than me.
Yeah, but there's not that many youngsters, are there?
Not many I'd like to see.
So I think there has been a decline in that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, if I can just add my little bit, I think it's a really great question, and it's definitely a change, isn't it? What's happened over the years is that now, the England junior number 1 won't be playing local league table tennis. He might be, or she might be, but I would say it's far less likely that because as Jill said, there are more coaching sessions. But I think at the next level, it's fascinating as well. When I was a youngster coming through, I could enter probably 10 tournaments a year when I could draw Chester Barnes, or I could draw Dennis Neal, or I could draw Trevor Taylor. I could play them all. Whereas now, because the players have to earn a living, they end up, Liam Pitchford, who's doing really well, plays in Japan. He plays a tournament in England. He plays in the national championships. And I just think somehow, again, you've got to accept the players need to earn the money while they can. That's very important. But somehow I feel we just need the players who are coming through need the opportunity to play the best players a little bit more frequently. And it's dead easy for me to say that. It's very hard to put a system in place where you have to, the players have to earn a living. Their careers are relatively short. And at the same time, we want them to play more against the up-and-coming players to give them experience. So it's a challenge, and I think your question really, brings all that out, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Right, Matt, can we take the question from Pennycook Table Tennis Club, the one that's come on YouTube?
Certainly can. I'm not sure exactly which individual it is, but from Pennycook Table Tennis Club.
I think I know
any view on why the women's game is so different from the men's, i.e. much flatter?
You might have to repeat. Can you hear that, Jill?
No, Matt's frozen now.
I'll put this one in then.
Yeah.
I think this, so from Pennycook Tennis Club, I think it's from an old adversary of mine, Greg McDonnell, could be. Any view on why the women's game is so different from the men's, i.e. much flatter?
Much flatter?
Yes.
Well, obviously they're physically stronger than men, so they're obviously going to play a more physical game. But I would say that going around watching events now and commentating at different events, there's not a lot of difference between how the men and the women play. And I'm talking about the top players. You only have to look at Sun Yung Sha. She plays very strong forehand and backhand, tries to do the same thing on receive and serve as the men do. I mean, obviously you've got different styles of play, like Ito. She takes the ball very early, very flat, but all the top women all take the ball very early, just like the men do. So that they are actually playing the same type of game, but their own, they're physically, they don't hit the ball as hard because they're physically not stronger.
Can I just ask Jill to expand on that a little bit? That when you was the #1 player, Jill, you seem to attend all the training camps, yet nearly all the time you've been playing with weaker players than yourself. How did you cope with that?
She was good.
Well, at the training camp, we did have sessions with the men as well, but I think in those situations, you've got to gear the exercises up where you can get benefit from it as well as your opponent. So, you can both get something out of it, even if the player isn't as strong as you.
I think, Dave, players attach a little bit too much importance playing against better players in practice, in my opinion. It is good to play against a better player, of course it is. Service and receive is more difficult, you're under more pressure, etc., etc. But you do need to practice footwork. You do need to do regular drills. You do need to do irregular drills where you're switching the ball, moving the ball around the table. And I think that's part of the skill of the coach as well, and the players, to set up a practice where they both benefit. And therefore, if Jill was playing against, say, one of the top lads, you might get her doing service and receive and playing points. If she was playing one of the ladies who was right below her, you might do regular exercise. But I think, the skill of it is, you're on the table for so many hours a day, so many hours a week, is benefiting from every one of those minutes that you're on the table. and setting the practice appropriately. And if you play all the time with better players, then you don't develop your technique, you don't develop your footwork, you don't develop certain aspects of your game. So
yeah, and I think always you've always got to be trying to looking for new things as well to do, and you can do that in a training situation.
Yeah. Well, my tuppence worth here, if I'm allowed a tuppence worth on your evening, Jill, was Dom was running at Lilleshall, and I think he went off for a sky somewhere and left me in charge. And then Des didn't have a practice partner. Now, if I played Des Douglas in a match, probably be 21-2, 21-3. But Des called me on the table and he said to me, Dave, I'm just going to play the ball in the last 6 inches of the sideline. You can play it anywhere. So straight away, he thought of a practice against a much inferior player. And it worked because I knew where the ball was going all the time. I was able to block him all over the place but it's, you know, to me, that was one of the brilliant things about this. Right. Now, Craig and Callum, can you just give me a wave to say you can hear me? Right.
Yeah, good.
Hi, Craig.
Hi, Craig.
Hi there.
Hold on.
Upside down.
Upside down, Dave.
Is that, can you all see that?
Oh, gold medalist men's team.
Home
Yeah.
countries.
That's not me.
Gold medalist men's team. Scotland are the British champions.
There you go.
They are. They won the home nations on the Isle of Man, and took two very young players. And when it really mattered, they produced the results. I'm hoping Callum himself has got a question, because I have one of those players here, Callum Morrison, who's coached by Gordon Muir, learnt his table tennis at Murrayfield, originally coached by Gordon's dad, Lindsay, and he produced 2 outstanding wins, and that was the reason we took gold. And Callum, have you got a question for Don and Jill?
Yeah, I'll read it out. So, as a coach, Don.
Craig, can we have Callum on screen? I don't want him hiding.
We can see him. We can see him.
You see him?
Yeah,
He's there.
yeah.
No,
Callum.
Hi, Callum.
Right. No, I want him
Right.
right.
As a coach,
I want a presence.
as a coach, is it better to have a team of top players who all got on very well, or 3 individuals who are great players but don't really get on? How much benefit does the genuine support from courtside raise a player's game?
Now, we've not seen that question, and that is an excellent question. So I'm going to see what Jill has to say about that first. I might just chip in at the end.
Well, I think you
Brilliant
always
question.
you always play as a team, but you're always individuals. And I think each player, I mean, I can only go from my thoughts, is every time I played, I tried to give 100%. There were times that I won, sometimes I lost, but my philosophy was I would always try and do my best. And likewise, my teammates would be the same, and we would encourage each other. But we are individuals, but we are as a team, and sometimes we won and sometimes we lost. I mean, in '76, we won against Russia in the early rounds, and then we had to, as the draw happened, we had to play them again, and you know, to try and lift yourself up, having beaten a formidable team like Russia was at that time. I think there was Rudnova, Grinberg, can't think of the third player now. But for us to get a win, that was great team effort there. And then we had to play them in the final, and we actually lost. But you know, we all gave 100%, and for me, that was for me as a player. And when I was a coach, that's all I ever expected of my players: give 100%. If you win, great. If you lose, then you know you've tried, you've done your best. What about you, Dom?
Yeah, well, no, as I say, I think it's a great question. If I'm a coach, give me 3 great players who don't get on. If you're telling me Don, you've got to come back with a medal from the World Championships, the European Championships. Give me 3 great players who don't get on. And then my job is not necessarily to coach them because they're great players, to work on that harmony between, to manage them and the interpersonal things that are going on at that level. And during my time coaching, I had some really interesting characters. Des Douglas was just absolutely fabulous. You couldn't have wished for a better player to have in the team. And then we I don't know if you remember, in England, we had this Chinese lad, Chen Xinhua, who came over from China. He was, and what a fascinating character he was, but completely different from Des. And we had a little bit of rivalry in the team. And that, I thought, made the team play better. Now, I think if you've got 3 players in your team who are very good players, who all get on, that team will do well. It'll play above par. It will box above its weight. But when you've got great players, because the great players are thinking, what do they think when they go? They just want to win and be better than the other 2. And if everybody does that, everybody's motivated in the right direction. So ideally, you want 3 great players who get on. Sometimes it doesn't happen. And that's the challenge then, I think, for the coach. Ideally, and that's the coach's job, to try and get the players to get on and support each other. But what I would suggest, what I would always do, Chen Xinhua would often disappear during a game when he wasn't playing. And the other lads, Des and so on, were prepared for that. So they didn't, I mean, to be honest, Des, I could fall asleep coaching Des and it wouldn't bother him at all. Des just had a job to do and he just got on with it. And he, as I say, he was a great character. Some players are very, very sensitive to that. If they think the other players aren't it, so you've got to prepare them. So I think it's different challenges for the coach. Excellent question. Me personally, give me 3 great players.
Yeah. But I think as a coach, you've got to know your players because you can't say the same thing to all 3 players. You have to treat them. You know what they will take and what they won't take.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Nice. Good question, Craig. Right, Holly, you're next. Have you got?
Holly.
We introduced Holly just before we came on air. Holly again is one of our young international players, and she's based at West Kilbride. And okay then, Holly, fire away. Emilia, you're next.
So when you were a junior, how did you balance training with schoolwork?
Ooh. With great difficulty, I would say my schoolwork did suffer a little bit. I think I probably got better grades than what I actually did, but I just had a passion and a love for table tennis. I did try as hard as I could, but I think it's more important nowadays to make sure that you concentrate on your education as well as your table tennis. I mean, there have been, I mean, I read somewhere a lot of other sports now, they have their athletes, not table tennis, but different sports, they have their athletes doing some sort of education, whether it's long distance learning or whatever, they're taking A-levels or different courses, because that helps them after they finish training, because sometimes you could just sit there and not do anything. Whereas I think it's very important that, you know, you do your education as well, if you can. I mean, Matthew Syed was a prime example, really. I mean, he was training, but he was doing 1 A-level a year. And then obviously he was very successful at playing table tennis and academically. And then he went on to Oxford and did philosophy, economics and politics. PPE. So if you get it right and you get that right balance, you know, you can do it. But for me, I think it's important that you do get your education, because there's no guarantee that, you know, players make it and earn a living in table tennis. You know, I've seen it time and time again where people leave school, go and play, go and train abroad, but don't actually make that high level and therefore can't earn a living. And then, you know, then they've got to go back and do their education again. So I would say, Holly, it's important to do, you know, if you can do both, but it's got to be, you know, structured.
Can I just say, Holly, I was the men's coach in England when Matthew Side was in the team. And Matthew came up to me. Matthew got 5 GCSEs, some half decent grades, but not exceptional grades. And then he said he was going to leave school, but he wanted to do 1 A level, exactly as Jill said, 1 A level each year for the next 3 years. And he set his stall out. And what Matthew had, I don't know what you're like, Holly, but Matthew Side had this ability. When we're on a training camp, we used to train at a place called Lilleshall in Shropshire, near Newport. He could, during his free time, completely isolate himself from the rest of the players and focus on his studying. And he's been able to do that throughout his career. And that's an ability that not a lot of players have, because they're that excited to be on a camp with their friends they don't see a lot of. And so in the evenings, they'll sit and have a laugh watching telly together. Now, not Matthew, he went off. And in those 3 A levels that he did, he got 3 A stars. And as Jill said, did politics, philosophy and economics at Oxford University and got a first-class honours degree there. And he's gone from strength to strength as a journalist and an author. And Matthew's got, having a really, really successful career and managed the two. So it can be done. And I think I would agree with Jill's advice. You've got to, education now is so important. Our daughter was England junior #1. And then she became England senior #1 when she was about 17, 18. And Katie stopped playing when she was 20, how old was she, Jill? 21, because she wanted to do a degree and she felt she couldn't play and do as well as she would want to do and be studying for a degree in journalism, she did. So
and she felt she couldn't get to the top in Europe or world. So that's when you have to make that decision, when you stop playing and concentrate on your education.
Tough decisions, Holly. I don't envy you them.
Don, you went to university, you played for England. Tell me how you mixed the two.
Yeah, so I made that. So I was. Desmond Douglas is the same age as me. We're both. In fact, Des was born in 55. I was born in 56. We were the same year as juniors together. He was England junior #1. I was England junior #2. The best of friends, best of mates. Travelled a lot of places together. Practiced a lot together. And I knew that Des was an exceptional talent. And Des did work under the buses for Birmingham City Council, and he did that when he was, he left after GCSEs, wasn't very strong academically. And then he went to Germany, and Des committed himself. And with Des's ability, his dedication, his attitude, Des had a great career in Germany. I hadn't got that ability, and I think that's where you've got to be honest with yourself, Holly. You've got to weigh it up. How good can I be? If I work this hard, I decided I couldn't make it as a player, not to the level so I went to Loughborough and I did sport, which actually stood me in good stead then, because I used my playing side, and I got a Bachelor of Education degree from Loughborough in sport teaching. And then I used that in my coaching career, really, when I worked alongside Dave and Pete Hurst for English Table Tennis Association as it was then, Table Tennis England as it is now. So it can be done, but you've got to be. The players always used to laugh at me. I said, "There's 3 things in life for you," and I used to say, "There's your social life, there's your education, and your table tennis." By social life, discos, and I said, "You can do 2 of them. You can't do 3 of them." So, and I think that's still pretty much the case. You can do your studying, you can do your table tennis, they can complement each other, but then you will sacrifice a little bit of your social life. Decisions have to be made.
Don raised an interesting point there when Don, Peter Hurst and myself were national coaches. We went to train with Preston North End at football. We put a 5-a-side team together and beat the Preston youth team. Do you remember that night, Don?
I do.
Did indeed. Anyway, Emilia, who's the one who's, it's to say we've got to thank for putting this all together with her foresight. She's not on my screen, but have we got a question from Emilia?
Yeah. Do you see a benefit of the girls going abroad to train? Because a lot of men are doing it increasingly, but not so many girls in the UK.
Can you repeat that, please, Amelia?
Do you see a benefit of the girls going abroad to train, like a lot of the men are currently, because not so many girls are following?
We've got a bad echo, haven't we, on this?
Yeah, no, we've got the question.
Oh, good,
Amelia, can you
brilliant.
hear us clearly?
Yeah, oh yeah, you're as clear as anything, yeah.
So basically, girls going overseas to train, not so many doing it, like there's more boys doing it, should the girls be doing more? Is that roughly your question?
Yeah.
It's a tough one. As you say, a lot of the boys go over there so they can get good practice. And I would say that if you're struggling to get good practice where you are, that's what you have to do. I know when I was 16, I went to Japan on my own and trained out there. I was still at school, but it was during the sort of school holidays. So I felt as though that would be good for my game, just to see how different people play in different styles. It is hard, but I think if you can play for a team, say in Sweden or Belgium or France, and then you can live with the players there, then that's only going to be beneficial for you. But it's expensive. You know, sometimes some players go abroad and play in these clubs, and they don't get any financial help from the club. So it's a cost to you and the family, and sometimes it can be too expensive, and so you've got to balance that up. But like me, even when I trained in England, I had no sort of practice close by. I had to sort of travel 25 miles to various venues just to get practice, and in fact sometimes when I was living in Dorking, I did train with one of your Scottish players, Dave Hanna, because he lived in that area, so I played with him a few times, but generally I had to travel to get practice, and unfortunately you'd have to do that, or you'd have to move away, whether it's, you know, somewhere in Europe or wherever. Is that what you're thinking of doing then?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's a difficult decision. I think you got to decide what you actually want to do, and your education as well, and at what age you do it.
Yeah.
And I think, Amelia, it can be a great experience as well, depending on where you go. You're seeing a different culture. I know Europe's pretty cosmopolitan now, but there's still differences in the cultures as you travel. Jill going to Japan, that's something she's never forgotten. So I think there's that side of it, which is important that you experience. And if you can get a really good situation to practice at an economically sensible situation, then why not? If it fits into your circumstances.
Yeah.
We didn't have gap years when I was a student, so the youngsters today have gap years and so on. And, you know, it could be an excellent way to spend one of those years, or before you go to uni, or before you start work. Yeah.
I did actually play in Germany for a couple of seasons, but I didn't actually stay there. I would just go for 3 or 4 days before the matches, and then, you know, come home, so that I was able to attend training camps, because that was one stipulation. If you played abroad, you had to attend all the camps, and you had to play in so many 3-star tournaments. So it's what works best for you. Some players go and play the matches and come home. Our daughter did that. She didn't want to live abroad. Because she had, you know, she could play against Don or I. We could train with her, so there wasn't that need for her to go abroad, but she went just abroad just to get some different match play.
Brilliant. Okay, Bob had his hand up there.
Yeah,
so
I had my hand up, yeah.
Bob, if you want to make your comment and ask your question.
Yeah, I mean, I've run a club since 2011, and we've been coaching juniors since that time. At the moment, I've had to step back because of health problems, and Jan Johns does it now, who obviously Jill knows very well, and Donna as well. I have worries about national teams playing at international level. Obviously, I'm in England, and I'm sure the concerns I've got are the same for the Scottish teams and the Irish teams and the Welsh teams. How do we in this country train to a level so that these teams can compete at world level and get far in the rankings? I've got a funny feeling that England's men's team did very well in the last few years in tournaments, getting to win some medals. And then you've got, like you mentioned, Liam Pitchford now plays for a Japanese team, changed his equipment, and all of a sudden he starts beating players that you would say, no, he's not going to beat him. No, he's not going to beat him. And Liam's beating them because his games come up no end. Is it a necessity that we should train our national teams abroad against, like you went to Japan with people like that, or should we import Japanese or Chinese coaches to coach them?
Okay.
I don't think. Well, we've had quite a few foreign coaches in England over the years, and we've still got one or two here now that work with the junior side. But I think when I see the teams now, even our women's team like Tintin Ho, Maria Sepsina, train abroad, because you need to have that quality of practice to actually improve as well. And there doesn't seem to be as many girls playing full time as there used to be quite a few years ago when I played. But having seen how things turn around for the men, and they earn a lot of money abroad now. Liam's earning a fortune in Japan, but he went at a young age to get that practice in Germany and France. And the coaches at that time who were foreign, they'd travel round to various countries just to get variation and to play against the better players as well. And the countries, I mean, there was many times when we were knocking on the door, said, could our teams come and play and train with you? And they say, oh, sorry, no, we're not able to this time. But then when our players got better, then they would invite them to go and play because they wanted to play against them as well. So it's like a bit of a chicken and egg, really. You've got to step out there and play in these countries to play against different, better opposition, and how they're doing things, and that's how Liam has improved. I mean, we had Liu Jiayi, who worked with him, a Chinese coach. He brought the lads on. Paul Drinkle, Darius Knight worked a lot with Liam Pitchford as well. So he brought ideas from the Chinese Table Tennis Association, and the players have done well, but we've got to keep bringing on the next level. And unfortunately, when now there isn't the government funding that we used to have. You've got funding, UK sport funding, and they will only fund if you are top 8, 10 in the world. And if you're not there, then you don't get any funding. And then we have Sport England funding that looks at participation. So there's no funding that's in the middle. And that's where we need it for players to get up to that level. And I'm sure that's exactly the same in Scotland. Unless you've got the funding, then it's very difficult.
Yeah, I suspect that the funding is a big problem. I always envisaged that was a big problem. But I think you'll have a lot of table tennis players coming through in the next few years, because big sales at the moment in table tennis tables.
Yeah.
I was talking with Bill Thornton from North Manchester, and he said he can't get enough tables. He's selling more than enough tables. So, little acorns. There we go.
Well, that's good news, Bob. You're in great hands, by the way, with Jan Johns. That's
oh, I know that. She's a
what I would
blessing
say,
to
Bob,
me.
I think to benefit from going overseas to train, you need to have the building blocks in place in this country first. So I think, you know, as a youngster, there's an optimum number of hours every week that you should practice. And it's difficult with education, but I'm thinking if we come on a training camp and we're not at school, I'm looking 4 or 5 hours a day on the table. When we're at school, obviously we can't do that, but we still can be looking for 4 or 5 sessions of 2 hours a week and a league match or whatever. And I don't think we've quite got that for a whole variety of reasons. Tables, clubs, sport-specific clubs, coaches like Jan Johns who can do it. But I think if we get those building blocks in place and then we start sending the players, it's no good if we send a player overseas, they come back to England and don't play for 5 weeks. Or they don't play very much for 5 weeks. So we need to get it right over here and provide the opportunities. And then we need to be very careful and strategic in where we send the youngsters to go and train so that they benefit, so that we get our players, your players from your club, maximise on the opportunity. They have a great opportunity to develop their game. So I think it's quite a few things involved in the process, but I think it's an excellent question. And we could probably do this again next week and just spend all session talking about this very question. It is a fascinating one, isn't it? How do we get our young players stronger? How do we help them? What structures do we need to put in place? And I know that Table Tennis England and Table Tennis Scotland are doing the best. And it's good news you say about all the tables. So fingers crossed.
Yeah. I've got a little story.
If you can just, if we can just move on a little bit.
Right,
Dylan,
okay.
have you got sound now?
Dylan? I think so, yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, great.
Yeah. As I say to everybody, ask your question, but at the moment, I want to get through everybody. So, Dylan, it's your platform. You've already been introduced.
Hi, John.
Hi, Dylan.
Hi,
Dylan. I've sent through a couple of questions to David, but I think to some extent, a lot of the things that I raised originally have been covered. So I've got another slight variation, if that's okay.
Yep.
So, as a coach, I've spent a lot of time thinking about, most of my time's been spent coaching young lads, just trying to work it out. I have a couple of young girls now that I'm coaching a lot, and so I'm having to think about how I approach coaching them. And I would just be interested to know what your thoughts are on the different approaches to coaching women as opposed to coaching men, whether there's technical differences, how to approach it in terms of their maybe psychological attitude to the sport.
I didn't hear that.
Well, it's basically boys.
I didn't hear that.
We lost part of it, Dylan, but I think I've got the thread of the question. It's basically coaching boys, coaching girls, differences. Do we do it in a different way? And also the mental side, which is very important as well. That was. So.
Yeah,
well, for me, I've coached males and females, and I've had I haven't had one female coach when I was playing. They were always they're always males. Can't think of I've never had a female coach. So for me, I think it's important that the coach with the player discuss the style of play they're going to play and tactics, and you've got to know each other. I mean, I know for me, I never trained anything different if I was coached, because I coached some of the boys, Paul Drinkle, Liam Pitch when they were younger, and then I had Lisa Lomas, and I had attacking players like Alison Brough, who married obviously John Brough from Scotland. So I was working with attackers and defenders, and I don't see that as any different. You've got to know the player and how they play. And for me, I don't see that females should coach females and males should coach males. I think you've got to know the table tennis, and for me to get in the technique right from the word go is paramount to me, and then you work on that as you develop as a coach. And sometimes you've got, for me, the best coaches could be the ones who start them off correctly. The best coaches me aren't the ones that work with, you know, the Scottish champions or whatever. It's those who get them starting off well technically, and then either they pass them on or they. But then you see you've got Romania, who have been very, very successful, and they have clubs where there are just females only, but they're not female coaches with them. It's a male coach, and that's also happened in Hungary at Statistica. That was just for females. So I don't think there's a right way and a wrong way of doing things. I think it's getting technique right at the beginning, getting a rapport with your player or players. But I think if you can get a core of girls together, they can help each other along. I think it's when, you know, I know when I was young and 9, 10, and I went along to a club, there was quite a few girls there, and we all progressed along. And I think, you know, if you can get a group of girls, you know, that works well.
So Dylan, I think when Jill's saying she wasn't coached by any female coaches, I think we should be developing female coaches, and we have got female coaches now that are coaching at the highest level, and I do think that's important for inspiring female players as well. Yeah. But I actually think a male coach, female coach, it's all about, you know, the quality of the coach and the advice they give, and, you know, the way they develop a player's game, male or female. I don't think that's a big factor. So I think a male can do it, a female can do it. Personally, I'd like to see more female coaches working at the elite level. You know, to have a female coach looking after the national women's team, I think is desirable, in my opinion. But you only appoint somebody because they're good at the job, not because they're male or not because they're female. Yeah. So that's my thoughts on that. I think in terms of what Jill said about the style, I think that Jill said it before, the main thing is the ladies aren't quite as strong as the men. So I think there's a little bit more room for manoeuvre in terms of defensive players. If you look at the top 100 women, the top 100 men, there are more defensive players in the women's game. Someone mentioned about the women play flatter. Well, okay, they hit through the ball. But when you look at the top, you know, Ding Ning, the young Chinese players that are coming through now, they topspin the ball very aggressively, you know, very, very similar to the men. So I don't think there's massive differences in technique. I think there is that physiological difference which gives more of a chance. When you think of the men now, what's the big lad from Sweden who got to the final? Falk. You know, he plays with short pimples on his forehand, and he you know, reverse on his backhand, but he hits through the ball with his short pimples, and it comes through very flat. So in the men's game, you know, the playing flat, i.e. with short pimples and hitting through the ball, has had great success lately. Final of the World Championships and a good performance against Marlong in the final. So there are differences, definitely. And then when it comes to the psychological side, I think, you know, it's important just to know your player, male or female. You know, sometimes one player will react to a kick up the backside where another one wants tender loving care. And they both, one reacts positive to TLC, one reacts well to being, you know, told in no uncertain terms that wasn't good enough. And so it's knowing your players, knowing how you get the best out of them. And I think that's important whether you're coaching the males or the females. So I think subtle differences, but I think it's a pretty similar situation.
Okay, that's good. Tessa, where's Tessa? Are you about? She's not on.
Yeah. Oh, no.
Yeah. Hi, Tessa.
Hi, Tessa.
Tessa is our national junior champion, and again is a full international, and she's based in Aberdeen. So Tessa,
Aberdeen,
over to you.
Why do you think table tennis is so unpopular with girls, and how do we get more girls interested?
Good question.
That's a good question. There's no easy answer to this. I think we've been
aerobic table tennis is an answer.
We've been talking about this for many years, but for me, I think and I said earlier, you know, it's important if you get a group of girls playing together. I think you've got to make it fun, and I think you've got to if you make it appropriate, so that, you know, and have good role models for them to see if you've got, you know, if you went to coach with a group of young girls, they can see that you play, and that's, you know, you'll be great as a role model to inspire, you know, sort of the next generation. I think also, and I said a little bit about it earlier, sort of having sensible competition and schedule and times, because I think for youngsters especially, you've got to make it short and sweet. It can't be sort of a long evening of playing league matches. You know, something's a small format, and make it more enjoyable. You know, I think that's important for me to get young girls playing. For me, it's got to be fun.
See, I think, Tessa, that one, you know, as Jill said, you can Sport England, Sport Scotland, everybody's keen to get, you know, more females playing all sports, table tennis included. But maybe we haven't asked the young players what makes it, you know, what would you do? What would you do, Tessa? Obviously you play to a very high level. What do you think? How could table tennis be more to your friends who don't play? Is there anything you think of? I mean, it's a very difficult question, I know.
Yeah.
Don, can I throw that to either Tessa, Amelia, or Hannah, whoever wants to pick it up? Any one of the three of you want to pick that question up? Amelia, you're the boss.
Yeah, so I think a big thing for me coming through has been like the lack of girls playing. The last few years, I've kind of found like a group of girls that play in Scotland who we've all kind of bonded as we've traveled around a bit. But I think growing up it was quite hard because my club is only trained with males, and I think it was quite hard to motivate myself to go to training when you don't really have any person to chat to there or anything.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, that's important, and I think, you know, and it's difficult, isn't it? If you're the only, you want to play table tennis and there aren't any other girls there to, as you say, to have a chat with, and it becomes more difficult. You end up by chatting with the boys, and it's not quite the same, is it?
Definitely.
No. It's interesting. I mean, if you haven't read it, I'd definitely read Judy Murray's autobiography, although everybody thinks of Andy Murray and they think of Jamie Murray. I mean, Judy herself was a national coach at the same time as I was a national coach, and she had all the same problems of trying to get girls involved. And she used to take puzzles, she used to take Monopoly to tournaments, she used to do all sorts of things. So she was always thinking outside of tennis to try to keep her girls motivated, rather than just going to a tournament and only playing tennis. You know, she'd think of all sorts of extra things to do, which is worth a read. Judy Murray's autobiography. Right, have we got Faye? Faye, have you got a question?
Faye dropped out, her connection didn't work.
All right, Paula, did Paula join us?
Not Paula.
Right. Peter, have you got a question? I've actually sort of kept you back a bit, Peter.
Yes, I have one question, which is, I have in fact, I have 2 or 3 young kids playing in our club that I'd like to introduce some defensive play. So as a start, I'm not a great coach as far as dropping defensive. Is there one tip that you could give me to start me off on how to coach a defensive player? Put you on the spot there.
Yeah, one thing. Well, for me, I think if you're teaching defence, you've got to teach a positive defender. And a defender obviously has got to attack now in this modern game. But for me, you've got to be able to chop and float, because sometimes you can see defenders and they're retrievers and they just get the ball back and they're very consistent. But I think to be successful, you need to be able to change the spin. So by changing the spin and deception, and obviously that means, you know, changing the bat angle, as you know, to be looking after a float ball to then attack the next one. So it's bringing things into the game that that element of surprise that they don't expect. And but you see, defensively now they take the ball that much earlier because they stay up to the table a lot more. I mean, I was more away from the table, so I could disguise it a little bit more with contact underneath the table. But you know, I didn't have anywhere near the attacking shots that they have now. I mean, they're top spinning, you know, backhand and forehand, and in fact, sometimes you even wonder if they are defensive players. But I would say, you know, if you're teaching someone to be a defender, they've got to be a positive defender so that they're changing the spin all the time.
It's almost when you say a defensive player, it suggests you're on the back foot, doesn't it? You're a defender, therefore. And I think Jill's expression, a positive defender, I'm not sure if, but it's absolutely right. So the defender has to be they have to play to win the point. You don't win the point by just keeping the ball on the table. You're chopping and floating. And I was the non-playing captain when Jill played for England for quite a few times. And Jill's strength was that's exactly what she did. She'd chop the ball and it was in bits. And then next shot, she'd float it. In other words, she'd go through the ball rather than a wrist going underneath it. And then people would lift that one off the end of the table. Or if they weren't sure, they'd push it. And if you push a float ball, as we all know, it just pops up in the air. And then Jill had a great backhand hit and she'd come in and hit it. Jill now would struggle because her attack wouldn't have been good enough with the way the game's developed. Jill didn't have a very good forehand. Well, relatively speaking, she was number 6 in the world, but her forehand topspin wasn't as good as it should have been, say, to get to number 2 in the world or whatever. So she'd have to improve her attack. So, and the final thing, Peter, that I would say is when you do learn, you've got to learn 2 games almost. You've got to learn to defend and you've got to learn to attack. So I do think that defenders tend to mature a little bit later, and therefore they need the mentality that it's not crucial to win every game. You don't play to lose, and you want people to be a little bit disappointed when they lose, but then you forget it and we work on your game, and defenders tend to come through, I would suggest, a few years later. It takes a little bit longer to develop that game.
And I'd also say from, you know, like pushing shots, a defender should never miss a push shot. That to me would be like your bread and butter. You know, that for me would be a bad unforced error. And I did that a lot when I was younger. And then one of the coaches, I think it was Ron Craden, said, you know, if you cut all those enforced errors, you know, you'd be so much better. You know, you could win 5 or 6 more points in a game, and that was up to 21 then. So I went away and practiced an awful lot of pushing. So, you know, when people tell you something, you know, one of the Scottish coaches tell the players, then, you know, go back home and do it on your own, you know, because you just got to improve those things where you're making mistakes to make you a better player.
Great game to watch. Defender versus attacker.
Yes.
One of the best games in my, you know, career of watching table tennis. You know, world-class defender against a world-class attacker. You know, Matthew Sai played some spectacular games. You know, there's a few Japanese players over the years that were amazing defensive players. Chen Xinhua. You know, wonderful to watch the attacker. But of course, the way technology's gone with faster bats, we had the glue period, didn't we? And all of a sudden, the technology favoured the players who use speed, and it became more and more difficult. And it's quite sad, I think, that we've only got 1 or 2 defenders in the top 100 on the men's list. We've got the Greek lad, Gionis, yeah. I commentate on, I don't know if anybody, you probably turn it off if you hear my voice, but I commentate with a lad called Adam Bobro sometimes. And he gets very excited. He's an LA disc jockey. He's Adam, who gets very excited. And he suddenly started calling Gionis in commentary. He called him the defentist. I said, what on earth are you talking about? The defentist. And he'd found out that Gionis is actually a qualified dentist and he's a defender. So he came up with this term, the defentist, which is typical Adam Bobro, if you've ever heard
it. It is typical, yeah.
but there aren't that many of them, which is a great shame.
But can we take on that same theme? Could we take Linda Powell's question? Now, Linda isn't with us. She's listening in Dumfries. And Linda too is. Oh,
Bye. Bye.
Cheers, Bob.
Bye.
Bob.
See you
Bye,
soon.
Bob.
Speak to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah. Linda's one of our, it is a few female coaches. She's a leading coach in Dumfries. We've also got Natalie. Natalie's not with us. She's one of our leading female coaches from Aberdeen. Lisa Noto-Angelo, I think, is a fantastic coach. She operates in the Central Belt. Anyway, Linda Powell's question, which I think you've got written down, is what set Jill on the defender's path? Matthew Side says he was a poor player in his early years, but once he learned defence, it made sense. I was in total awe of Jill, as in addition to her grit and guile, she was the epitome of grace.
Grace, gosh.
It's all about your defence. Good question.
I started off playing, and this coach, Alf Robinson, he was called, and he saw that I naturally took the ball later. When I played, when I first got on the table, my natural instinct was to take the ball late. So he got me defending, and I was quite small as well. And at that time, it was very difficult for me to play a forehand. So he had me pushing and then going away from the table and attacking. So he saw that naturally I took the ball later. So that's really how I started off defending, yes.
Yeah, again, it's interesting there is because, again, Jill is remembering her paternal coach. So sometimes players get passed on, but they never, ever forget. If you speak to Colin Dalglish, our number one, he'll talk about Lindsay Muir. If you speak to Gavin Rumgay, he'll talk about Eric Lundberg. Everybody remembers that first coach. So if your player has moved on, don't feel bad, because they'll always remember you. They'll always remember you. Matt, have you got a question, or are you too busy doing doing all the technical stuff?
I'm multitasking.
Right.
No, I think I shared a note just because the mention of Judy Murray reminded me of her Myth Hits campaign, which has been phenomenally successful. So I shared a note about that, because I do think we could have a whole session just on how we might get more girls into the game.
It's I agree.
A huge question. And although Amelia's been quite quiet tonight, she's got loads of ideas, hasn't she?
Good, yeah.
Well, I think that's the best people to ask the young players.
What they actually want themselves,
what would attract their friends.
What would attract their friends, and what do you think is missing at the moment?
Yeah. What I'd like to do now is, Matt, could I have an extra 15 minutes?
You can have as long as you like, Dave. Yeah.
Brilliant. I'd like to talk through 76. Obviously, you've had an unbelievable career, but I'm sure 76 winning the Europeans. Brian Merritt, a defender, was your coach, I believe. And can you sort of talk us through the build up to it, arriving at the venue? Did you think you could win it? Were you 50-50? What was your attitude? What was your training before? Give us a little bit of build up to 76 and going to the final.
Well, at that time we had training camp at Lilleshall, and at any major championships we always had sort of 2 weeks. Sometimes we had a week and then went home for the weekend and then came back, so we had a bit of a break. So we had intensive training for 2 weeks. Everybody at that time was playing well, and there was a good team spirit amongst the whole of the team. The men and the women practiced together socially. In the evening we were together, had fun games and whatever. So there was a good rapport with the team, and I would think the difference nowadays is that they tend to go separately, the men's team and the women's team. But then, you know, we all tend to stay together. So the training camp went really well, and we were all feeling physically fit and felt as though we were all playing well. And I think we gelled well, you know, as a team. There was myself, Linda Howard, who's now Linda Jarvis, Carol Knight, who was then Carol Moore, who was then Carol Knight. Thinking who was the third player? Can't believe I forgot that.
No.
Was it Anita?
Anita.
Yeah, Anita Stevens, I think, was the third player. So we had a good team, and we fought hard. And I think for me, when you've trained hard and you've put all the effort in, and as I said before, you know, it's always been my philosophy, no matter what I do, I'll do it to my best ability, and to get to the standard that I got to, I had to put hard work in, and I was prepared to do that. And that would be training on the table, that would be physical, you know, thinking about it, you know, we did have training camps every month, but I had to do a lot of the work on my own, say 3 weeks of a month, where I had to do my own. I had a training session, but I did it because I thought, well, if I don't do it, I'm not going to sustain a European Championships. And at that time, we had the team event and we had the individual event, whereas now they're split up. So it was quite grueling when you think the singles was best of 5 up to 21, and then you had the team event was that was 2 singles and 4 singles and a double. So it was quite grueling, but for me it was like, you know, you just had to take each game as it came. So I never felt as though I put any pressure on myself, although I knew I had a chance of doing well. I was absolutely gobsmacked when I won it. Even though I'd been successful, you know, during the whole of the event, you never think, oh yeah, I'm gonna win. You just don't know. These things happen. People play really well on the day, and then, you know, it's just one of those things. But it's a memory that I'll never forget, and I can still, you know, picture it now in my head.
And your hardest match in that individual event in '76?
Probably the semi-final against Zoya Rudnova, which went to 5. I think it was about 18 or 19 in the 5th.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and she was an attacking penhold player, and then obviously had to play another defender in the final, which is a long, hard, grueling game. Because she was a real tough girl, was Maria Alexandra. She was hard as nails.
Yeah. Were you afraid of losing?
No. I just thought, well, if, you know, I give 100%. If I lost, then I lost. I did my best, and so I didn't put pressure on me then. And okay, I'm not saying I wasn't disappointed, but it didn't take me long, you know, to recover.
So going into that final, Jill, it wasn't that this is a golden opportunity, I can be a European champion, I better not blow it.
No, I didn't think like that.
No,
I didn't think like that, because I just thought, well, I'll just go on and, you know, do my best. I know what tactics I'm going to play, and just sort of reinforcing and talking to myself, because you didn't have those opportunities to go back to your coach, you know, because 21 points, and obviously with an expedite, it's quite a long period of time. So I think it's important for players to think for themselves.
Yeah.
I think sometimes a lot of players rely on their coach to tell them what to do. And I think as a player, you've got to learn how to play yourself. Yeah. And then you know, after a game, if you've won or lost, you evaluate. You know, I always used to, and in fact, I've still got it upstairs. I've got a little blue book where I wrote down the tactics I played against every player, because you played against so many, you could never remember them all in your head. So just little bullet points I used to write down, and then sometimes that would change. You know, I'd look at a player and I thought, well, you know, I'll use a different serve against this match because she, you know, she obviously played well. She picked that up well from a specific serve I would do. So you're always looking and changing your tactics. But I think you've got to look and think for yourself when you're on the table.
Right, it's match point, 1976. Did you win it on the first match point, or do you remember?
The first game or the fourth game?
Championship point, or you obviously had championship point because you won it, but was that first championship point?
Yes.
And was there any thoughts going through your head? I'm serving or I'm receiving. This is championship point for the European Championships. Or
yeah, you see, I can't. When you're a defender playing expedite, you've got to be thinking when they're serving, you've got to try and not lose the point. So you've got to make it as difficult for them to attack. Whereas for a defender who's serving, they've got to take their time a little bit more and say, well, you don't have to rush and attack the ball straight away. You can fiddle and mess about. So I would be looking, I want to win all the points when they're serving, but I want to pick up a couple of points when I'm serving.
Yeah.
And that's, you know.
Would you say your nerve threshold at love all, 10 all, or 20 all was different, or would you say that you was able to stay on an even keel? Generally, obviously, I'm thinking of Euro 76, but generally. Were you nervous?
I think you have to be a little bit, because otherwise, you know, you'd be a bit flat. So you've got to be a little bit nervous, but you know, once the game gets going, you know, I love all. You know, I knew it was going to be a long match, and you just have to play each rally from each serve. You know, so it's. I suppose as it gets nearer the game or that game, I'm thinking, oh, you know, I've got a chance, but you just think, right, just, you know, just take your time. I can picture it now, you know, just breathe, you know, just play and not think about the end, as it were. So that's why I was so, I suppose, relieved and excited when the last point I won.
Well, listening to that calmness, Jill, I can see why you became European champion and I'm playing the Moffat Division 22.
Why do you get nervous?
I'm playing the point before, the point afterwards, but not the point that matters, which is now.
Oh, right. Yeah. Once it's gone, it's not worth worrying about.
Indeed. Right. Don, would you like to pick up if is there anybody who's not asked a question from this group, or have we got any more on YouTube that have come through?
I think that's it.
Okay, Don, would you like to look? I don't know if you've got the questions in front of you, because or we could ask Dylan to ask a follow-up question, or Joan or Gillian. I'm going to wind up at 8 o'clock, and it's 5 to 8 now.
Okay, and what do you want me to do?
No, I mean, it could either. I tell you what, Dylan, if you ask the next question, it'll be the easiest.
David, I don't think I have anything that I think if someone else has got a burning question, let them go for it.
Yeah. Joan, have you got another question? Well, you had a few. Would you like to
Yeah.
follow?
What kind of training did you do, Jill and Dawn? Did you do multi-ball, robot, had a coach? Did you do gym sessions?
Well, don't forget, it's a hell of a long time ago when I played, Joan. So we didn't have gyms as such. I mean, we were given programs that we had to do. We had our own program. We used to do speed and endurance for running, different types of running circuits for strength, flexibility, and obviously to increase range of movement. Multi-ball, we didn't do a lot of that as a coaching tool, but obviously now traveling around to a lot of the tournaments, it's used an awful lot in the training hall. Everybody's using multi-ball, and it's a great tool. I mean, we did have robots, but that was a limited use at the end of my career. But we did play at that time with lots of balls on the floor. So instead of just playing with one and then, traveling to pick it up, we'd play with lots of balls. So we were continuing playing. But for me, I used multi-ball an awful lot when I was coaching. And so did you, didn't you, Don?
Good, thank you. Yeah.
Amelia, have you got another question for Don and Jill?
What would be your best advice playing against like international players that are higher than you? Just like any tips to go against much better players?
Well, firstly, I would say that if you've got the opportunity to see them, how they play, whether you've got some video footage or on YouTube or whatever, I think that's advantageous. But I think, well, you go on with your tactics we've got to do, and you've got nothing to lose, so go for your shots. And I think that's important because you're learning all the time. And as the match is going on, if you try something and, you think, well, that serves a bit too long, I'll try it a little bit shorter. So don't be afraid thinking, oh, gosh, I'm going to go on there and I'm going to get whooped here. Just use it as, I'm going to do my best and I'm going to learn from this.
And I think the other important thing is, Amelia, keep trying. You keep them on the table as long as you possibly can. Yeah. Every point's valuable. And make that, and if you lose 11-3 the first game, then try and get 4-5 the next game. And it doesn't matter what the score is, keep them on there as long as you can, because next time you play them, you'll get closer and you'll get closer and so on. And I know that doesn't work exactly like that, but it's a good philosophy to have. But yeah, it's like Jill said, just go on, do your best, go for your shots, nothing to lose. So be positive. It's something to enjoy. But keep them on there as long as you can. I hate to see it when a youngster just gives up. They're getting hammered and it's 3-0 down, best of 7, and they're 7-1 down in the fourth, and they just throw the towel in. Keep them on there as long as you possibly can.
Yeah. Just to back Don and Jill up on that, I was coaching Ewan Walker at the World Championships. He's won his group, which was a fantastic achievement. And then he was drawn against Gatien, who was the world champion at the time. Now, at no stage did I say, Ewan, you could win this game, but we had targets. I think he got like 9 the first game. Again, it was up to 21. So you did see if you can win 2 points off your own serve. See if you can win a point off the receive. See if you can get in a 7 or 8 ball rally. So each game we had a different target. Now, we lost it 3 straight, but each game he got more points than the previous game. And we both felt he gained a lot from that match. But when you looked at the scores, 8, 11 and 18, you might have thought, it was a foregone conclusion. Right, who wants the last question of the night before I'm going to get Jill to give us some word? Let's go back to it. Jill and Babs, have you got another question for?
Yes. What encouragement would you give to players young and old at the moment to stay motivated while we're in lockdown?
That's a good question.
Well, that's a good question.
Watch my podcast.
Well, even Don and I were playing table tennis the other day on 2 coffee tables. We'd lent our table tennis table out. We could have done with it in lockdown, but so we had 2 coffee tables, one each side of the room, and we played that for half an hour. So, but I think for youngsters, some, you know, I've seen on Facebook and Instagram, and they've got tables, and you know that's great for them. But if you've got a brother or sister, then that, you know, you know, or a parent, you know, or someone who can do multi-ball to you, or can practice, that's great. But if you haven't, I just think there's no excuse for not coming out of lockdown in the best physical condition.
Good.
If you can't play, there's nothing to stop you getting as fit as you can. You know, you can do circuits, you can do all sorts. There's loads on YouTube, and I'm sure, you know, coaches have given their players. I've seen that Wales have been having Zoom sessions with their squad players, and they've been doing circuits and all sorts of things. So I don't think there's any excuse for coming out of this not being the fittest that you could possibly be.
We've been playing on the dining room table.
Have you? Good on you. Has your mum been playing?
No, it's been gardening.
Have you? Oh, I bet you've got a beautiful garden.
We'll be back though. Back helping with the coaching after lockdown.
I'll tell you what I think is going to be interesting coming out of lockdown. You know, let's say it's another couple of weeks, 3 weeks, you know, before we get going again. Probably longer than that. People who've been in lockdown and they've, as Jill said, have a brother, sister, or they're in lockdown with another player for whatever reason, and they're isolating together and keeping to all the rules. The fact that they can play together, I think they'll come out. You know, so it's going to be quite interesting, isn't it? I think it'll soon level itself out. But definitely that first month after, once we start playing again, the people who've been able to have a situation where they can get on the table. So it's a tricky question. It's a great question, but it's a tricky one because some people will have better situations than others. You know, you'll have a really good top young player, but, you know, mum and dad can't play, and, you know, people can't come round and you know, because of the rules of lockdown. So, but yeah, I agree with Jill. You know, fitness, everyone can get themselves fit.
I mean, up here in Scotland, we've had Diane Abbott, you know, the Labour MP. She's been looking for lockdown, but she can't find it. Anyway,
on that note,
yes.
On that note, Jill, can you wind us up? What do you want to say to us all?
Well, I would say that if you want to be as good as you possibly could be, you've got to work hard. It's not easy. I loved table tennis. Table tennis was part of my life, but I trained hard and I practiced hard. Every time I was on the table, then, you know, I would try my best to try and improve. So if you want to be the best you can, it's not easy. You've got to put hard work in.
Right, let's
and
give
you'll reach your potential.
And a big hand to Matt and Amelia and Pete for putting this all together on the YouTube. And thank you all for attending. And we'll see you all soon. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
We've enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Stay safe, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All the
Bye.
best. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Can we just